Mate, let's not sugarcoat it. What's going on right now between Trump, Albanese, and Australia's place in the world is nothing short of a bloody circus. You've got Donald John Trump back in the White House as the 47th President of the United States, running his second act like some kind of reality TV comeback tour. And over here, you've got Anthony Albanese looking like the awkward kid who can't get a seat at the cool kids' table. It's embarrassing, it's cringeworthy, and it's making Aussies wonder if our so-called special relationship with the Yanks is just a fairy tale we keep telling ourselves. And before you think I'm exaggerating, remember this. Nearly every other leader of a major ally has had a face-to-face with Trump. The Brits, the Japanese, even the French have lined up for the handshake photo. But Albo? After almost a year of Trump back in the Oval Office, still no meeting. Just a few phone calls that sound more like awkward Tinder chats than serious diplomacy. Before we dive into this Trump-Albanese train wreck, where Albo's ghosted by Trump, lays circling like a hawk, and Daniel Andrews is out there schmoozing with dictators, smash that like button like you're erasing Australia's so-called special relationship from history. Subscribe if you're sick of watching our leaders beg for scraps. And grab the Can I Vote for a Kangaroo shirt, links in the description. Here's the kicker, though people are starting to whisper, is Trump straight up freezing Albanese out because of comments from back in the day? Let's not forget, Albo and his crew tried to paint Peter Dutton as Trump-like during the last election campaign. Now imagine being Trump, the king of grudges, hearing that some bloke down under is basically saying being like you is an insult. Of course that's gonna sting. And if you know Trump, you know he doesn't forget. This could be personal, not political. It's like the world's biggest sledge match, except one bloke has nukes and the other's just trying to get his calls answered. But while Albanese is stuck in this diplomatic limbo, guess who's quietly making waves? Susan Penelope Lay. Yep, the new leader of the opposition, first woman to run the Liberal Party and the opposition at the same time. And don't roll your eyes thinking she's just another Polly. Lay's already turning heads because she's saying what a lot of Aussies are thinking. We can't afford to be ignored by Washington while China, Russia, and every other wannabe superpower is flexing their muscles. She's got this energy about her, like she's ready to swoop in and take Albo's lunch money if he keeps fumbling. Honestly, the timing couldn't be juicier. You've got Trump shaking the world order again, Albo getting ghosted like some poor bloke left on read, and Lay standing by ready to say, told you so. And here's where it gets even spisher. While Albanese is fumbling for FaceTime with Trump, Daniel Andrews, the former Victorian Premier, decides to strut into Beijing like he's auditioning for a role in a propaganda film. No joke, he's out there cozying up to Xi Jinping, Putin, and even Kim Jong-un, looking like the kid at school who desperately wants to be in with the bullies. Imagine the optics. Our ambassador stayed hundreds of kilometers away to avoid the parade, but Andrews? Nah, he's all smiles and selfies with dictators. You reckon that sends a good signal to our allies? Absolutely not. To Ukrainians in Australia, Tibetans, Hong Kongers, it's a slap in the face. And it makes Albanese's position even weaker, because now it looks like Australia's split down the middle on who we're even aligning with. Here's what no one in Canberra wants to admit. Australia's foreign policy is starting to look like a dog's breakfast. On one side, we're begging Trump for attention, hoping he'll finally give Albo the photo op every Prime Minister craves. On the other, we've got past leaders pawing around with authoritarian strongmen, and stuck in the middle? The Aussie people, wondering if their leaders actually have a plan, or if it's just political theatre. The media calls it bizarre to cringeworthy, but honestly, it's worse than that. It's dangerous. If Washington starts doubting our loyalty, if Beijing thinks we're easy pickings, and if our leaders can't get their act together, we're in for a very rough ride. Now, you might be thinking this is just another episode of Aussie politics being messy, but nah, this is bigger. This is about power, influence, and who actually gets to call the shots in the Pacific. And right now, Australia looks like the kid stuck between two divorced parents, both trying to win custody of the region. Trump's America wants loyalty. Xi's China wants obedience. And Albo? He looks like he wants everyone to like him, but he's ending up with no one respecting him. That's the real kicker, mate. Respect. Because once that's gone, we're not a middle power anymore, we're just a pawn. Right, so here's where it gets properly messy, mate. If you thought Albanese looking desperate for a handshake with Trump was awkward, Just wait until you hear the whispers flying around Canberra right now. There are insiders, and I mean people who've been around the block, not just some intern making TikToks who reckon the White House isn't just forgetting about Albo. They reckon Trump's deliberately stringing him along, letting him sweat, because he wants to see just how far the Aussie PM is willing to crawl. And let's be real, Trump thrives on that. He loves the theater of power, the dominance of making another world leader wait, almost like a cat playing with a mouse before it finally pounces. To Trump, diplomacy is a bloody reality show, and right now, Albanese is the comic relief. And it's not just about bruised egos. This has actual consequences. Imagine trying to convince Trump to back us on AUKUS, the big nuclear submarine deal, when he won't even give Albo a coffee meeting. The Yanks are supposed to be our biggest security partner, but if Trump reckons Australia isn't loyal enough, or worse, not worth his time, that deal could end up dead in the water. And without AUKUS, suddenly we're the ones standing out in the Pacific with a butter knife while everyone else has got bloody great swords. It's not just embarrassing anymore, it's dangerous. And when you put that against the backdrop of China's constant flexing in the South China Sea, you start to see why people are calling Albanese's leadership weak as piss. Meanwhile, Susan Ley is sitting back like a hawk. Every time Albo stumbles on the world stage, it gives her more ammo. And don't underestimate the symbolism here. For the first time in history, the Libs are led by a woman. That's huge. She's not just trying to be the alternative Prime Minister, she's trying to rewrite the narrative of what leadership in Australia looks like. And she knows the Aussie public loves a strong contrast. On one hand, you've got Albo looking needy, chasing Trump like a fangirl trying to get backstage at a concert. On the other, you've got Ley presenting herself as the no-nonsense, straight-talking leader who'll stand up to Trump, stand up to Xi, and stand up for Australians. Whether she actually can is another question, but in politics perception is everything. And right now, she's winning that perception game. Now let's stir the pot a bit more. Think about the timing of all this. Trump's back in power in 2025, and we're not even a year in, yet already Albanese is looking out of his depth. That's exactly the moment when voters start asking themselves, hang on, if this bloke can't get respect abroad, why should we trust him at home? And that's exactly the kind of question Ley is banking on. She doesn't need to land knockout punches. She just has to keep pointing to the scoreboard. Albo's got zero face-to-faces with Trump, and Australia's standing in the world is looking shakier by the day. But here's where it gets downright scandalous. Rumors are bubbling that Albo's people have been trying to engineer chance encounters with Trump at international summits. Not official sit-downs, not scheduled meetings, I'm talking about hanging around corridors, hoping to bump into him for a 5-second handshake in front of cameras. That's not diplomacy. That's desperation. It's the kind of thing that makes Australia look like the needy mate at the pub who just won't take the hint. And you can bet your bottom dollar Trump's inner circle finds it hilarious. They'll be dining out on those stories for months. Meanwhile, the public sees all this play out in the headlines, and it's a bloody PR disaster. Aussies don't like leaders who grovel. We like a bit of mongrel, a bit of backbone. And if Albanese keeps looking like he's begging for scraps, it's only going to fuel the narrative that he's soft. Soft on China, soft with Trump, soft everywhere. And let's face it, in Aussie politics, once you get the weak label stuck on you, it's near impossible to shake it off. Just ask Kevin Rudd or Malcolm Turnbull. And then there's Daniel Andrews, the wildcard no one saw coming. His trip to China, cozying up with dictators, was already a bad look. But here's the spicy part, people are asking if he's undermining Albanese on purpose. Think about it. Andrews has never exactly been shy about doing his own thing. Him popping up alongside Xi and Putin sends a completely different message than what Albanese is trying to project. It's like having two Australias, one that's desperate for American approval, and another that's happy to schmooze with authoritarian regimes. That split image makes us look like we don't even know who we are anymore. And that's not just embarrassing, it's strategically suicidal. The thing is, Australians are noticing. This isn't some boring Canberra bubble issue anymore. When mums and dads at the dinner table start talking about why can't our PM even meet the US president, you know it's cutting through. And when voters start feeling embarrassed by their leader, that's when the knives come out. History tells us Aussies will turn on a PM quick smart if they smell weakness. And if Ley plays her cards right, she could be sitting in the lodge before long, making history as the first female PM from the Liberal Party. Imagine that headline: Australia's first woman opposition leader topples Albanese after Trump snub. It's clickbait gold. But let me ask you this, mate. What if Trump actually prefers dealing with Lay? What if the White House is already hedging its bets, thinking Albanese won't last and Lay might be the next one in charge? That would explain why Albo keeps getting the cold shoulder. Washington's not dumb. They read the polls. They watch the media. If they reckon Albo's a lame duck, they won't waste their time. And that's the ultimate insult, the idea that the President of the United States is more interested in your political rival than in you. That's the kind of humiliation that sticks. And we haven't even scratched the surface of how this is playing in the Pacific. Our neighbors in the region, from Papua New Guinea to Fiji, are watching closely. They know that if Australia looks weak, it gives China more room to move in their backyard. And if they see Albanese getting iced out by Trump while Andrews is grinning with Xi, what conclusion do you think they're drawing? That Australia's a reliable leader? Or that we're a confused mess, easy to divide and conquer? It's not rocket science. So when you put it all together, Trump's power games, Albo's desperation, Lay's rise, and Andrews's rogue diplomacy, you've got a perfect storm brewing. A storm that could reshape Australian politics and our place in the world for years to come. And the scariest part? Most Aussies don't even realize how close we are to being sidelined completely. We keep telling ourselves we're mates with America, but mates don't ignore each other for nearly a year. Mates don't leave each other hanging while everyone else gets a handshake and a photo. Maybe it's time we asked ourselves the hard question: are we actually important to the US anymore, or are we just convenient when it suits them? And here's the thing, mate Trump knows the answer already. He's testing us, seeing if we'll break, seeing if we'll crawl. And the way things are going, I reckon he's enjoying every second of it. All right, buckle up, mate, because this is where the story gets properly unhinged. We left off with Trump ghosting Albanese like a bad Tinder date and Susan lay circling like a hawk ready to pounce. But what you haven't heard yet is the whispers about what's happening behind closed doors. Canberra is buzzing with talk that Trump's team has been quietly reaching out, not to Albanese, not to his office, but to people inside the Liberal Party. Think about that for a second. The President of the United States, supposedly our closest ally, might be laying the groundwork for dealing with a potential Lay government before one even exists. If that's true, it's not just a snub, it's a straight-up vote of no confidence in the bloke who's supposed to be running our country. And don't for a second think Trump wouldn't play that game. This is the guy who bragged about calling Kim Jong-un Little Rocket Man one week, then shaking his hand the next. He thrives on playing favorites, making one leader feel like royalty while leaving another groveling for crumbs. If Trump really is leaning toward Lay, that would explain everything: the endless delays, the cold shoulders, the so-called warm phone calls that sound faker than a sausage roll in a vegan cafe. Albanese is out here begging for recognition, while Lay is probably sitting by the phone, waiting for it to ring from Washington. Now, let's chuck another log on this fire. There are reports, not officially confirmed, but from sources who've been right before, that Trump flat out told his advisors he doesn't trust Albanese. Not because of policy, but because of personality. Trump's view, apparently, is that Albo doesn't have the ticker. That he's weak, indecisive, too busy worrying about what people think instead of making bold moves. And here's the controversial bit. There are people inside Australia who secretly agree. They'll never say it on the record, but behind closed doors, you hear it. Albanese is nice enough, but nice doesn't cut it when you're dealing with the most ruthless power brokers in the world. And the irony is bloody rich. This is the same Albanese who thought he was scoring political points by branding Peter Dutton Trump-like. Now, he's the one begging for Trump's attention while Dutton sits back with a grin, knowing every insult probably burned into Trump's brain. It's almost poetic in a cruel way. You call someone Trump-like as an insult, then end up desperate for Trump's approval. That's politics, mate. It's karma with a kick. Meanwhile, Lay is quietly building a reputation as the no-bullshit alternative. She's hammering Albanese on foreign policy, hammering him on cost of living, hammering him on anything she can find. And it's working. She doesn't need to be flashy. All she needs to do is stand there looking competent while Albo trips over himself. Voters notice that stuff. They might not read the fine print of policy, but they can smell desperation a mile away. And right now, Albanese reeks of it. But here's where things get downright explosive. The Pacific region is already under pressure, with China buying influence left and right. Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, even Fiji, all getting friendly with Beijing. Australia's supposed to be the regional leader, the one holding the line. But if Trump doesn't take Albanese seriously, why would they? They'll look at Canberra, see a PM who can't even get a handshake from the White House, and think, maybe it's time we hedge our bets. That's how influence erodes. Not with bombs or invasions, but with doubt, with hesitation, with 1,000 small cuts that bleed you dry. And what's Albanese doing while all this unfolds? More phone calls. More photo ops with leaders who don't carry the same weight. It's like he's putting band-aids on a sinking ship, hoping no one notices the water rising. But Aussies aren't stupid. They see the headlines. They see the awkwardness. They feel the embarrassment. And every time the PM comes home empty-handed, it chips away at his credibility. You can't run a country on good intentions and polite smiles. You need results. And right now, he's got none. The scary part? This isn't just about one bloke's career. It's about the whole country's future. If Trump keeps freezing us out, if China keeps pulling in our neighbors, if Ley positions herself as the stronger option, we're looking at a political earthquake. One that could flip Australian politics on its head and leave Albanese as just another footnote in history, remembered only for being the PM who couldn't land the most important meeting of his career. And if you think that's harsh, remember this. Politics is brutal. Leaders don't get judged on effort, they get judged on outcomes. It doesn't matter how many warm conversations Albo claims to have had with Trump. If there's no handshake, no face-to-face, no tangible result, it all means nothing. He's just spinning his wheels while the world moves on without him. So, where does that leave us? A prime minister on shaky ground. An opposition leader smelling blood in the water. A former premier gallivanting around with dictators. And a US president who loves playing mind games with anyone who isn't stroking his ego hard enough. It's chaos, pure and simple. And for once, it's not the usual Canberra bubble nonsense. This time, the whole world is watching. And here's the kicker, the bit that should make every Aussie sit up straight. If our leaders don't get their act together, we'll lose a place at the table. We'll stop being a player and start being a pawn. And once that happens, mate, good luck getting it back. Respect is hard to win and easy to lose. And right now, it feels like we're losing it fast. So maybe it's time to face an uncomfortable truth. Australia's special relationship with the US might be more fragile than we ever wanted to admit. Maybe Trump's cold shoulder isn't just personal. Maybe it's a wake-up call. A brutal reminder that in the ruthless game of global politics, there are no permanent friends, only permanent interests. And if we don't wise up, we'll get played. Again and again. See you in the next one, and don't forget to slap that like button like it just sold off your local hospital to pay for another overseas junket. Oi, and if you're really fired up, grab the "Can I vote for a kangaroo" shirt. Wear it to the next rate hike meeting, the next protest, or just your local cafe when you're forking out $9 for a flat white while wondering why your tax dollars are fixing someone else's country instead of ours. Stay loud, stay awake, and never stop fighting for the Australia we bloody deserve.